Welcome in to 76ers Now. Jake Chipper here with you. And on today's show, going to get to the latest 76ers injury news ahead of Sixers versus Magic here on this Monday, October 27th. An update on Joel Embiid as well as several other players. Plus, the Sixers seem to be embracing this new cultural shift inside the organization and inside the locker room that really could be big time for this organization, not just this year, but years down the road as well. So we're going to get to all of that here on today's show. But before we do, look, I know it's early in the season, right? Sixers just a couple games in, but Philadelphia, number 2 in the Eastern Conference, right there with the Chicago Bulls at 2-0. End the season. End it right now. Sixers would be the number 2 seed, obviously. Still very early, but wanted to pass that update along because only 4 undefeated teams remain in the NBA. Bulls, Sixers, Thunder, and Spurs. So obviously a good start for the 76ers, and they will look to keep that start going tonight against the Orlando Magic. We will be live on the channel for that game, doing a live watch party, just like we did for the Sixers season opener against the Boston Celtics. This Sixers versus Magic game gets underway at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, so we'll be live at about 6:45 p.m. Eastern, about 15 minutes before tip-off. We'll talk about the game, live play-by-play, of course, and just hang out with everybody and have a good time. If you didn't tune in for the first one, I encourage you to tune in for this one. It's a great time, so lock us in, hit that sub button, and turn on your notifications. That way, when we do go live, you will be notified. So let's get started with the Sixers injury news heading into this game. And of course, we know about the players that have been out for Philadelphia. That's Jared McCain, that's Paul George, and that's Trendon Watford. They have all been out for a little bit here, but a couple of new additions to the injury report after that game against Charlotte on Saturday, which we will talk about that game against the Hornets, another come-from-behind victory for your Philadelphia 76ers. But Joel Embiid is listed as out for tonight's game. Now, it is a back-to-back for the Sixers, but Embiid will not play tonight. It's listed as injury management, knee injury management. So not necessarily that the knee's actually ailing him right now, but of course, on a back-to-back, the Sixers do not want him out there playing both ends. Paul George does remain out with his knee injury. Does seem to be getting closer to a return, though. Jared McCain remains out with that thumb, though we have some good news on the McCain front coming up in just a little bit. Dominick Barlow was added to the injury report. He suffered a elbow laceration against the Hornets and is going to have to undergo a procedure, which we'll touch on as well on today's show, but he's going to be out for this one and for at least a couple more games. And then Trendon Watford also remains out with his hamstring injury. We know hamstring injuries can be tricky to return from, so we will see. We have an update on his timeline coming here as well. So let's dive through each of these injuries really quick. Obviously, starting off with the most notable, which is going to be Joel Embiid. Look, it's just an injury maintenance thing. We know they don't want him playing in these back-to-backs, and that's really all this one is here. You see the Sixers' upcoming schedule this week. They play tonight against the Magic. They play tomorrow against the Wizards. So, you could take it a couple of different ways. Maybe the Sixers want Embiid playing against the worst team in Washington that has the worst bigs as well. Orlando's pretty loaded with size. But also, if you rest Embiid today, he gets 2 days off, Saturday, Sunday, and then he gets to play Sunday, Monday after that game Saturday, then plays tomorrow on Tuesday. Then the Sixers don't play again until Friday, so he could get another 2 days off. I think that's probably the route. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Doesn't seem like a real injury for him, just more of letting him rest and, of course, not playing him in those back-to-backs. But, man, this comes after Embiid obviously had a rough start to the season in that game against the Celtics to open the season. But against Charlotte, he looked somewhat closer to his older self, right? Now, only played 20 minutes again on that minute restriction, and most of that came in the first half. But in 20 minutes, put up 20 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 turnovers, and shot it way more efficiently than he did in that first game. But again, is still on that minutes restriction. It was good to see him, though, out there and at least knocking down shots. And after the game, Embiid was asked about his minutes restriction and how hard it is to get into a flow when you are limited to shorter stints, less minutes in a game than they're used to for a player like Embiid. And this is what he had to say. The longer I sit, the shorter stints. You play 2-3 minutes and you got to get out. That's literally nothing. I might as well just stay home and be with my family. Longer stints, you're able to let the game come to you. And of course, this quote went viral. People are saying, oh, look at Embiid, he wants to stay home. He doesn't want to play, and he's hating on the Sixers and all that. Look, I think this is obviously taken out of context. He was asked about these minutes restrictions he's been on, and in Game 1 against Boston, he played later into the game because he was playing shorter lineups, I should say, and shorter stints, where it was only a couple minutes he'd come out, and that's why he couldn't get into a flow. Against the Hornets, he was out there for longer periods of time at once, but was able to get into a flow because of that, but couldn't play late into the game because he hit his minutes restriction earlier on. So, hopefully the farther we get into the season, this ends up getting lifted, but I trust they have a plan. Even if Embiid obviously wants to be out there and he doesn't want to be on this minutes restriction, it seems to be working at least so far, and they can keep working and coming up with another plan. Now we'll get to the update that we had on Dominick Barlow. Obviously, Dominick Barlow had a tremendous debut for the Sixers in that game against the Celtics, but unfortunately, in that game against the Hornets, did suffer that laceration on his right elbow, and he's going to be undergoing a procedure today. This tweet from yesterday from Paul Hudrick to address that laceration on that on his elbow that he suffered against Charlotte. So he's out the next 2 games. So today's game and tomorrow's game against the Washington Wizards. He'll be reevaluated later this week. Again, it's unfortunate because he really did get off to such a strong start. He was playing well in that Hornets game as well before he ended up having to leave with injury. And, we saw in that opener with his size, his athleticism, starting that game and starting the game against the Hornets as well, using his tools and just playing hard and filling a role for the Sixers while not, needing the ball and needing to take a lot of shots. Just the hustle plays, the offensive rebounds was big. Sixers are going to miss that, especially with all the other injuries at the forward spot they have. Justin Edwards going to have to step up in his absence. Trendon Watford, who had a decent game 1, not so great in the last game. Or excuse me, not Trendon Watford, he is still out, but Jabari Walker going to have to step it up a little bit as well in this one. So that is the 2 new injuries that we have to report. Getting to some somewhat positive news here, though, on Jared McCain. He was seen getting shots up today, this morning, after Sixers shoot-around, and, actually moving around. Adam Aronson tweeted out the videos, and I tweeted out the video as well of him, moving around, dribbling the ball, shooting with his right hand. So has seemed to have moved on to that playing brace on that hand. Seems to be, getting a little closer to coming back. Expect an update, Aronson says, on McCain likely coming in the next week or so. That's very positive to see him back out there. And, man, once he does get back out on the floor, this guard rotation for the Sixers is going to be scary, right? We obviously know what Tyrese Maxey can do. VJ Edgecombe, very good in both the Sixers' first 2 games. Obviously, game 1 scoring a lot, but he had 8 assists in the second game against the Charlotte Hornets. And then Quentin Grimes hitting those big shots down the stretch, really stretching the court out, hitting those threes for the Sixers in that second game as well. You add McCain into the mix, this guard rotation, man. I know some people were worried about it coming into the year and how small and guard-reliant they are, but it gives the Sixers so many options offensively. Going to be very dynamic, especially once maybe the best three-point shooter out of all of them in Jared McCain does finally return. As for Paul George, not too much of an update on that front at this point. Look, Nick Nurse has just continued to say that there are some hurdles he needs to clear, some checkpoints he needs to reach before he can get back out there on the floor. He's been practicing for the most part, full practices with the team, so I would expect him back sooner rather than later, but of course the team doesn't want to rush anything when it comes to Paul George. As soon as we get some kind of real, tangible update, of course, we will let you guys know. And then we also got to talk about Trendon Watford, who has been out with that hamstring injury. Some, decent news that towards the end of last week, he was seen running close to full speed up and down the floor really for the first time since he did suffer that injury. But he is obviously still not back yet. Sixers could really use him, man. Someone who, at that 4 spot, a little bit of a different skill set. He can handle the ball a little bit, getting those DHO actions with Tyrese Maxey, and just provided another body there at the forward spot with all these injuries. So I'm excited to see Watford back in action. He was somebody that the Sixers signed him. I was very excited. Haven't gotten to see him yet in a Sixers uniform, but hopefully we can see him and Paul George and everybody else that is injured sooner rather than later. So that is all the injury updates we have here today. Got through all the latest 76ers injury news ahead of tonight's game against the Magic. Coming up next, I want to talk about the Sixers really embracing this culture shift, right? It seems like there's such a big difference from where the Sixers were at last year and then what they were talking about heading into this season and then actually delivering on some of those promises a few games into this season. So we'll talk on that as well as talking about that game against the Hornets. But before we do, I want to give a big shout out to today's sponsor here on 76ers Now, and that is DraftKings. All your favorite NBA players are back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is the place to bet on NBA stars this season. New customers, bet just $5 and get 3 months of NBA League Pass, plus score $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code SixersChat. That's code SixersChat. Bet $5 and get 3 months of League Pass, plus get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Pass-through of per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. NBA League Pass auto-renews until canceled. Additional terms at dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. And these are my picks for Sixers versus Magic here on Monday, October 27th. I'm going with a 3-pick parlay. Sixers money line to beat Orlando. They are actually pretty big underdogs at home, but give me Philly to stay undefeated. Tyrese Maxey, 4+ 3-pointers made. And Andre Drummond going to play a big role, of course, with no Embiid. 10+ rebounds in this one. You parlay those three together at plus 900 odds. A $100 bet can win you $900. Of course, all odds and lines are subject to change. Big shout out to DraftKings for sponsoring today's show. So let's get now to this culture change that I did mention before we talked about DraftKings here. I think there has been a real change and a real shift in the attitude of this Sixers team and the culture of this Sixers team. And they talked about it coming into the season, but a team that isn't just going to crumble when players aren't out there on the floor, when Embiid isn't out there on the floor and playing at his best, right? A team that's going to set the tone, always going to play hard, and we've seen that in the first 2 games. Both of these wins for the Sixers have been come from behind fourth quarter wins. And I don't think this Sixers team from last year wins either of these games. I'm just being totally honest. These are the kind of games they have lost in the past against Boston. These are the fourth quarter deficits they faced in each of these games that, of course, they won. Down 13 with just over 11 minutes to go in that fourth quarter. They come back, they win that game. And that was a hard-fought game. And then the Hornets, they were down 10 with under 6 minutes to play. Really wasn't looking good. Sixers were up early. The game kind of got away from them in that third quarter, similar to the Boston game. But once again, able to fight back, especially starting on the defensive end of the floor where it all started, where the Sixers were awful last season. And I got to give a lot of credit to 2 people in particular that I think deserve the most credit for what we've seen this year. That is Tyrese Maxey and that is Nick Nurse. Because both Maxey and Nurse talked about this offseason being the same team no matter who's out there on the floor at any given moment, always playing 110%. So when the game's over, and Embiid talked about this as well, when the game is over, no matter win or lose, you say, man, that team played their heart out. They played 110%. And you can say that with each of these first 2 games. Obviously, a big year for Nick Nurse. And just a couple games into the season, still working through his rotation, still working through his lineups. But I think he's made some good decisions and in-game adjustments. And, of course, instilling that culture in this team. You're seeing them respond. And I think a big part of that is Tyrese Maxey taking on that larger leadership role like we talked about, like he said he needed to do in the offseason. It really seems like he's arrived now, and he is that guy that can lead this team over the hump as Embiid, obviously still that veteran presence, and I'll talk about Embiid here in a second, but Maxey really does seem like the one who is pushing that and that everybody else really does look up to. And especially we saw in that game against the Hornets, a few players step up who really weren't all that good in the Sixers season opener against Boston. Look, Quentin Grimes was phenomenal against the Hornets. He wasn't bad against Boston by any means, but what really showed why the Sixers wanted to retain him, right? Obviously, the contract thing, a whole nother thing. But look, he wasn't able to practice with the team, wasn't in training camp. Clearly needed to get on the same page as his teammates in Game 1, but in Game 2, 24 points, hit some huge threes late, including the one that would put the Sixers ahead with just seconds remaining. I loved what I saw out of Quentin Grimes. And again, this is the kind of thing that we were talking about where it doesn't really matter who's on the floor or whose night it was the previous night. And Grimes talked about this as well. Like, look, some nights it'll be my night, some night it'll be Tyrese, some nights it'll be VJ, but always ready to go, always ready to play. And for him, especially the defensive end of the floor was very, very impressive. And that's something you can bring every single night and why I think he will make such a big impact on this team this season. Another player who, look, I might owe a little bit of an apology to. There's still plenty of season left to go, but Andre Drummond was spectacular. And honestly, I don't know if the Sixers win this game against the Hornets without the play of Andre Drummond down the stretch. 60 minutes, but played every minute in the fourth quarter of this game. Nick Nurse making 2 big subs late in the third quarter into the fourth in this game while the Sixers were losing. Andre Drummond and Justin Edwards, who we'll talk about in a second. But Drummond, man, 7 points, 13 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds to go along with 2 steals, made some great defensive plays. You know, a little bit up and down, had some lapses as well, but you're not asking him to be perfect, and was a plus 12 in a close game for Philadelphia. And look, I saw the comments, right? So I did a short after the game talking about it, and I brought up Andre Drummond. I saw some people saying, hey, you wanted Andre Drummond off this team. You don't know what you're talking about, right? And look, I did want Drummond off the team. I said the Sixers should trade Andre Drummond. Maybe I was a little bit quick on that decision, right? Last year was a bad year for him, as it was for the entire squad. He was dealing with injuries pretty much the entire season. I thought he was cooked. Still, want to see him throughout the rest of the season, stay healthy, and prove he can do this over the long haul. But this is the kind of Andre Drummond the Sixers wanted last year, right? Who is going to rebound the basketball, make some plays defensively, and finish near the rim, right? Especially with how disappointing Adem Bona has been to start the season. Big time for Andre Drummond to get off to this kind of start. And I mentioned it was the 2 subs near the end of the third quarter that really helped the Sixers team get back in this game after it started to slip away from them. That was Andre Drummond, and that was Justin Edwards. And a big credit to Justin Edwards because he didn't play at all in the opener against the Boston Celtics outside of 5 seconds where he came in at the end of a quarter for a defensive sub. But late in this game, late in the third quarter, Edwards comes in, and he hits 3 threes in total, 3 of 5 from behind the arc to spark this Sixers team that had gone ice cold in the third quarter. And without that little offensive push from Edwards, again, I don't know where the Sixers team would have been. So credit to Nick Nurse for getting both these guys in the game, but credit to both of these guys as well for being ready when their opportunity came. And that comes down to, again, the culture this Sixers team is starting to set. And I want to end talking a little bit about Joel Embiid, right? Because throughout his career, and especially we've seen it over the last few years, he's gone under some criticism for his leadership style and really lack of leadership that people have seen from him. But I think within closed doors, he has been a good leader. But I think this year we're really seeing Embiid now transition to becoming that true veteran leader of this team, even if, he's not an outspoken leader, not a loud guy. That's why Maxey has become that vocal leader for Philadelphia. But just hearing Embiid, talk in the post game and just sound a little bit more, I almost want to say responsible as a leader and a player on this team, right? And complimenting his teammates and just talking about it as a whole. I credit Embiid as well, for really buying into what is going on and what the Sixers' plan is for him injury-wise as well. So I just wanted to give Embiid some credit because, I think this whole thing doesn't work if the guys from the top down aren't bought in. And to me, it seems like Embiid is bought in, even if he does have some disagreements from time to time with how his injury management is going at points. But that minutes restriction, that'll be over soon, hopefully, Joel. All right, before we hop on out of here, want to ask you guys this, leave you with this. Be honest with me down in the comments section. Do you trust this 76ers team? Given what happened last year, a good start this year, do you trust that what we're seeing right now is real? Just give me a yes or no down below in the comments section on if you trust this version of the 76ers team. And don't forget to hit that sub button. Another reminder, we will be live tonight for 76ers versus Magic about 15 minutes before that game does get underway. Subscribe, turn on your notifications, and hopefully I'll see you there.